thank you all again for joining us. Welcome to today's session on Global Perspectives on Fire Investigation. My name is Kayla Terrio. I am iGUIDE's account executive in the US. I live in Colorado, and I'm moderating the discussion today with our experts. So, as you will see, today's agenda, we're covering subrogation, using AI for investigation, European fire investigations, investigation and interview techniques, scene documentation. We'll speak a little bit about iGUIDE at the end, and we'll have some time for questions. So today I am joined by experts Maggie, Bob, Tuomas, Mike, and Roger. We're discussing a variety of topics, and I hope everyone learns a little bit and gets some questions asked. Well, up first this morning, I have Maggie Stewart. Maggie Stewart is a civil litigation attorney focusing on large loss, subrogation, and recovery cases with the law firm Cozen O'Connor. Maggie routinely works with fire investigators from the origin and cause investigation stage through trial. Hi, Maggie. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Well, since we have a wide range of experience and attendees who are both on the private and public side, I guess we'll start with giving us a little bit of an introduction on what is subrogation.
So being a property subrogation attorney means that we represent insurance companies that insure homes and businesses that are damaged by fire. The word subrogation comes from the Latin root subrogare. It has two parts, so sub in the place of, as in substitution, and rogare as in to ask or propose. So a subrogating insurance company is making a demand in place of the property owner. When fire damages the property of a homeowner or a business, its insurance company can pay to repair the building. It can pay to cover the costs of contents and personal property. It can pay businesses for lost profits. It can pay homeowners for the cost of alternate living arrangements if they need to stay in a hotel during the period of repairs. And then after the payment of those costs, the insurance company has the right to seek recovery of that money from the responsible party in place of the homeowner or the business owner. And that right can arise by contract. So usually there's something in the insurance policy that gives the insurance company the right to recover that money in place of the business owner or homeowner, or it can arise as a matter of equity under law. So subrogation is about holding third parties accountable, and we work with fire investigators to identify the origin and cause of the fire and figure out who is responsible.
Oh, interesting. What would you say as a subrogation professional are the keys to a good fire investigation from your perspective?
So we're focused on identifying the responsible party and building a case. That typically involves early communication with subrogation counsel, thorough documentation, and objective reporting. So communication with counsel is important for purposes of identifying and preserving evidence early on. It's important for identifying potentially responsible parties so that those parties can be put on notice and have an opportunity to participate in the investigation. And it's important for determining whether additional experts, such as engineers, are needed. Thorough documentation involves photographs, video sketches, and detailed notes. At the investigation stage, we're typically not looking for a written report. When you give your verbal report to the subrogation counsel, we relay that information to our client, the insurance company, and then it has attorney-client privilege. In contrast, if you write a report directly to the insurance company, that report will not be privileged and may need to be disclosed to the adverse party if there's a lawsuit down the line. Objective reporting involves separating facts from assumptions. We face legal standards that require us to prove our case in court, so we need your reports to be clear, unbiased, and well supported.
Yes, we had a lot of questions from the attendees about report writing and from the legal perspective. So I appreciate your input on that. That, one question that we did get from some of the attendees a few times, like, how do you recommend documenting adequately when clients request no written report?
Um, I recommend taking detailed photographs, sketching, um, taking detailed notes, not necessarily putting your opinions in your notes, but having something that you can look back on that thoroughly documents the scene and the important parts of the investigation.
Wonderful, that makes sense. Since we have a good mix of private and public fire investigators on this call today, some who will be working with attorneys on a regular basis, or maybe after they retire, spend more time working with attorneys on cases like this. What are some, what is some advice that you would give to fire investigators, either who are now working with attorneys or will in the future for subrogation, from your perspective?
So if you're coming over from a public entity, um, such as a fire department, it's pretty different working for private clients like insurance companies. And the primary difference lies in the objective and scope of the investigation. So an investigator working for a public entity is typically looking for origin and cause, and then identifying any criminal activity like arson, and serving the public interest. A investigator working for an insurance company is helping to uncover facts that will support liability, which may include looking at specific devices, construction, or products to prove negligence. Um, and typically, insurance companies have greater financial resources than public entities, um, so the investigation can be more focused on uh, liability and proving negligence.
Okay, that makes sense. Would any of our other experts on the panel like to, add to what Maggie is saying, or maybe ask her a question?
Maggie, what's your thoughts on audio recordings of the interviews as opposed to taking notes? I know as time goes on, my handwriting gets really, really bad, and sometimes what I've written down, I can't even decipher. So I like to record those audio interviews as well, and then maybe even use technology to get them transcribed. What are your thoughts on that?
I support that. I think that's great. I think with an audio recording, you can capture much more than trying to take it down in notes. And I think that that's a helpful tool.
Does that become is that some I get, well, it does become discoverable somewhere down the road in litigation then, doesn't it?
Right. And so I would just keep that in mind when, thinking about the questions that you're asking. Um, Probably your entire file will be turned over to the adverse party down the road.
Okay, thank you.
That's a
Thanks.
great question. Okay, Maggie, is there anything else you would like to share, or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you for your expertise.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, Bob, I guess great timing. We'll turn it over to you. So I'm introducing Mr. Robert Toth. He began his career in the fire service, dedicating nearly 21 years in the field. During the last decade in service, he transitioned to law enforcement, specializing in fire investigations with both public and private sectors. In 2002, following his retirement from the service, he established Iris Fire Investigations, Inc., where he currently conducts origin and cause investigations in Colorado and neighboring states. He regularly delivers lectures on various topics and has held the esteemed position of president within IAAI. All right, well, welcome to the webinar, Mr. Bob, and you are our expert today on AI. So can you give
Wonderful.
yes, can you give an overview of AI and how do you use it for investigations?
Sure. AI or artificial intelligence is a very big, broad term. More specifically, for the best advantage or the best tool that I use it for in fire investigations, the term is generative AI. It allows me to do research. It allows me to compile data, and that's typically how I use my fire or AI during fire investigations. And in fact, I use it during all phases of investigations, from before I even leave the scene to after I return back to the office and have to compile all the data.
Great. So what would you say? I know AI is a hot topic in every industry right now, and specifically speaking, even private and public side investigations. What would you say are some do's and don'ts when using AI?
Uh, Great question. I'll give you a little analogy here. If tomorrow your client or your boss tells you we've got a fire scene, we've sent a vehicle for you, you go outside and it's a fully autonomous vehicle. You sit behind the wheel, and it asks you, what's the address of the fire you want me to take you to? And you type in the address where you need to go, and then suddenly the car starts up, the vehicle starts up, it's fully autonomous, and it starts driving down the road, and you're sitting behind the wheel, absolutely having no control over it. But nonetheless, you're sitting behind the wheel. You're watching all of the traffic. You're watching the traffic signals. The vehicle is staying in the lane. It's stopping at the proper locations. It's maintaining a good speed limit. Maybe even put on your favorite radio stations. Got the air conditioning on. Whatever the case may be. But you're still going to sit behind that wheel and sort of monitor and evaluate all the data that you're collecting visually, and and how the vehicle is reacting to it, and the type of response that the vehicle is presenting to you based on all of that input. What you're not going to do is look at your watch and say, we're still an hour away. I'm going to just jump in the back seat and take a nap while this vehicle continues to take me to my scene. Uh, we're not going to do that. That's hazardous. That's dangerous. And using AI in the same way for your fire investigations is exactly what you don't want to do. No matter how you use AI, there still has to be very strong and intentional human intervention and oversight into the output that AI creates for you during the course of your investigation.
So that's a great point. That's a really great analogy. I mean, tangibly, when you mean human oversight, so walk me through using AI before an investigation and then how you apply oversight to the answers and the data that you're collecting.
Sure. Based on the audience we have, we've probably all seen a few vehicle fires. But if we were to suddenly get an assignment for a luxury vehicle fire, but this luxury vehicle is a fully autonomous electric vehicle, uh, I've never done one of those before, but I know vehicle fires in general. I have used AI to ask for types of questions I may ask the owner of the vehicle. I've told AI I don't know anything about these vehicles as far as the electrical system, the propulsion system, or anything like that. Provide me 20 questions I can ask the owner of the vehicle relative to the vehicle and associated with the fire incident. And it would produce 20 questions for me. It did produce 20 questions for me that were outside the typical vehicle fire line of questioning. They were specific to electric vehicles, very helpful in collecting data. I asked the same question of AI for 20 more questions that I could ask the dealership about this electric vehicle. Great questions that, as a fire investigator of 30 plus years, aren't my general questions that I might ask about a vehicle fire. And then you can ask the same chatbot for 20 more questions. Given the opportunity, what could I ask the manufacturer of the vehicle? And in that particular case, it exposed recall information. Did they do any repairs on the software, et cetera, et cetera. Collects a whole bunch of data that I may not have been able to glean from the insured or the manufacturer or the dealer had I not asked those questions of AI.
That's a good point. I mean, you're using it to assist in the investigation, not exactly find answers for you, but helping you stay curious and ask the right questions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very important. It's not going to do your work for you, but it's going to make you more efficient. Uh, at the scene, you're going to be collecting more data. You're going to be doing maybe an interview with the insured or maybe the first responders. You can record that video, and that's why or that audio recording. That's why I was talking to Maggie about it. And you can do your initial interview. You can record that audio. And then as you excuse yourself to go take your initial photos of the scene and sort of develop a scope of the loss, you can have AI analyze that audio interview and identify other areas of questioning that may provide more data. So you can come back after you've taken your photographs, and you'll have a list of more questions, obviously from your initial inspection, as well as what AI may have recognized from the audio interviews. You can collect things like we've done an experiment where we've taken 75 pages of financial documents, which include IRS tax returns and other federal documents, and we've asked AI to analyze it. And within a minute, it has identified indications of financial fraud and possible default in the business, which may be motive for an insurance fraud case and intentionally set fire. Now, what you're not going to do, and this goes back to human oversight, what you're not going to do is take that information that AI provided you, copy and paste it into your report, and go to court and testify on it. What that information that AI has produced for you is identified the need for another subject matter expert, another human who's going to provide oversight and do that analysis for you. And that person is the one that's going to provide you the information for your report and then provide that testimony later in court.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know we have, all of our experts on today have probably personally used AI, but maybe are also using it in investigations as well. Would anyone else like to jump in and add to what Bob's saying about AI?
Well, the analogy that comes to mind for me is the use of an accelerant detection canine in a fire scene investigation, right? The dog's not, you can't put the dog on the stand to testify as an expert witness, but you're the one as the handler who has to understand what's going on with the dog and get up and testify as an expert and truly know your area of expertise. So like AI can be very useful in some aspects of fire investigation. Ultimately, you're the one who has to get up and explain fire dynamics and the effects of ventilation and anything else that might come up.
Yeah, that's another great analogy. The dog can't testify. All right. Bob, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience?
Sure. I know we're bumping up against the time already here, but Nick mentioned Applaud being a perfect tool for doing audio recordings. He's absolutely right. Chris asked about do you advise or document in report that you've used AI? I would defer to your superiors or legal counsel on how you articulate that, or if you articulate that in a report. But one thing you can do is if you use any of the AI tools out there, be very familiar with their terms of service and their privacy policies, and make sure you know what they do with the data that you provide them. Most of the free sites use that data to train their large language models. You probably don't want to avoid those. You probably want to spend a few dollars and make sure that the service you're using does not use your data for training their large language models or make that available to anyone else. And then finally, what you can also do is create what's called an audit trail. If you're going to use AI during the course of your investigation, you can put them in folders, and for each prompt that you provide AI to get some sort of output, you keep that cataloged. And if somewhere down the road they want to know how you used AI or how did AI help you in your investigation, you can produce that entire audit trail. You can see the prompt that you provided. You can see the output that the AI tool gave you, and then they can correlate that to what information may be in your report. And it's also, finally, it's also a good tip to use other large language models or other chatbots to test the output of the one you're using. Have AI check each other out, and then again, finally, like how we started, you really need human oversight in everything that's produced by AI.
Yeah, that's another great point to, you're not relying on the AI, one, to solve the investigation, but also you're going to fact check the fact checker, so to say. Yeah, please keep your questions going. Again, at the end, we'll read through and I have a moderator reading through the questions, so we'll try to get to as many as possible. Well, thanks, Bob. We're going to move over to Mr. Tuomas. Tuomas is an experienced fire safety professional and fire investigator currently working full-time as a fire investigator at Fire Investigation Services Finland. He has investigated fires and provided fire investigation training in Finland, various European countries, and the USA. He is a founding member and past president of the Finnish Association of Fire Investigators and serves as the president of the European Association of Fire Investigators. And he currently holds the IAAI CFI and IAAI ECT certifications. Welcome, Tuomas. Good evening to you, I believe.
Late afternoon, thank you.
Late afternoon. Okay. Well, we appreciate you joining us, and just ask from your experience on the other side of the world, can you provide a little clarity on how you became certified and kind of what the process was for you as far as education and training?
Yes, my pathway to IAAI certifications began at an IAAI ITC, and that got me interested. I started with the IAAI FIT, which is for those early in their career. I started with that one, and after multiple years of training and work experience, I did the IAAI CFI certification with the UK chapter of IAAI. For those looking to get certified, I would recommend setting your targets and making like a checklist of things you need to do for the certification. What's your current work experience? What's required for each certification? Then consistently working towards those goals. Start with the FIT and then move on, perhaps NAFI, CFEI, and later the IAAI CFI. Get as much as training as you can. A lot of IAAI chapter organized training events. For example, the European chapter organizes webinars that are tested training and available to everyone, not just the chapter members. So get a lot of training, and then it will be easier to pass the certification exam. The CFEI is currently a bit easier to get. You can get it on just a written exam, and currently the CFI requires a practical evaluation, so it's a bit more complex to work it through. But contact your local chapter of IAAI or an organization in your area and try to get a mentor or somebody help you through the process, and that makes it easier for you. And I had a good support from the UK chapter working the CFI with me, and that was a lot of help.
That's a great point. Speaking of a mentor, so would you say that a lot of your success in becoming certified is due to the networks, the organizations, the mentors that you seeked out?
Yes, definitely so. Even my current job is a product of somebody mentoring and showing support for me. I would not be working private full-time in my own company without the networks I've received in the fire investigation world. And having those networks is also a very good asset for your casework. I've investigated a lot of fires in saunas, and I've recently been contacted by two guys from different parts of Europe whose sauna fires are really rare. So they contacted me, and I was able to provide them some insights. And last week, I contacted a couple of guys from UK regarding different fire cases. There's a lot of knowledge around different areas of the world. And somebody's rare case can be your common case. So it's good to exchange information in your networks.
Yeah, that's a great point. Maybe some fire scenes we see daily in the States could vary so differently, on your side. So what would you say, and your perspective in, working fires in Europe? How would the investigation, obviously a lot on the private side is different when it comes to subrogation, but just generally as a whole, how would you say the investigations kind of differ globally from your perspective?
I'd say that the scene work and the basic fire investigation that's quite similar. Different areas have different resources, different type of organizations doing the investigation, but it's I think the most biggest differences I see are in for example, the legal aspects of investigation. We don't have such subrogation rules or spoliation rules as there are in the US. So sometimes our processes get more conflicting than they should be because, for example, insurance companies don't notify each other early enough. So in some ways, I'm jealous of the US procedures on how to manage the complex cases. We don't have them, and then the processes are more complex than they maybe should be, or they could be easier.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up, the communication aspect on that. So what would be your advice to anyone, leading an investigation globally, how to set the standards for communication, and what are some things that you do that you found successful, especially on large, complex cases?
Open communication from the start on, getting the right parties involved as soon as possible, and then sharing information as much as you can. I recognize that there are legal requirements for sharing information. You can't share everything, but share as much as you can. Discuss the ongoing investigation and allow all parties to provide their input, for example, in some testing or expert investigations done as a part of the investigation. When everybody gets to give their input, the results become better and they're more accepted by the other party, and reducing polarization of opinions in the investigative process.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know sometimes holding information in may seem like the right thing for your party, but at the end of the day, my limited experience with investigations, everyone's seeking the truth. So everyone should walk in with that mindset that no matter which side, quote unquote, you're on, you're all experts seeking the truth about what happened to that scene. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the mindset all over. I've seen it. It doesn't matter whether you're in US or Europe. That's the mindset every investigator has.
Absolutely. Anything else you would like to share about your experience, or maybe answer, a question from around the globe?
There was a question about the use of benefits of working together, public and private. Having done that on both sides, I started on the public side and now working on the private side. Usually I've seen that the private side perhaps has more resources to do complex testing. And on the other hand, the public sector is usually there at the start. So sharing information and providing resources for public sector is one benefit of working together. And then there's also the exchange of knowledge. Some of the guys working public side, they have perhaps different training, different experiences than guys working in the private side. So training together is also beneficial for both sides of the investigation.
Yeah, that's a great point, to train together and keep in mind that while one side may have more resources, maybe the private side is certainly always there first. So there's some information that they could share to really benefit the investigation. Would anyone else like to make commentary or ask Tuomas a question?
Yeah, I can jump on with Tomas because I started in the public sector as well. And I remember being very frustrated that we were stonewalled as to how far we could go with our investigations with limited funds and fulfilling our mission of determining that it was not a crime and being done with it. So I make a point now as the private sector guy. I always, you're contacting the public sector as part of your investigation anyway, but I always make a point of inviting them out, talking to them, because they're there at the time of the fire and overhaul and extinguishment process. So they have a lot of uses and details and photos and knowledge that we may not know. And vice versa, I'll share with them our findings, our 360 scans for their own training or file. And it works better for everyone when we just, work together on these things. Sometimes they'll get pushback from public sector guys, and sometimes the private sector guys push back and don't want to share anything either. And it just makes it harder for everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Tuomas, is there anything else you would like to share with us before?
No, thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you joining. Okay, our next expert that we will be hearing from is Mr. Mike Vergon. Mike served as an ATF special agent for nearly 24 years. For the last 15 and a half years of his career, he was certified fire investigator and a member of ATF's national response team. He now runs Vergon and Associates Fire Investigation LLC in Indianapolis, specializing in fire and explosion scene investigation, consulting, and training. He has taught at the ATF National Academy, the National Fire Academy, and International Law Enforcement Academy in Budapest, Hungary. Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I think we'll start with, based on your heavy law enforcement experience, what are some good investigation practices and techniques that you would recommend to the audience?
Oh, that's a hugely broad question. We could probably talk all day about that. But I think my specialty is, or what I like to focus on is interviewing and being prepared for a good interview. And so with that comes doing as much homework as possible. In our line of work, it means truly become an expert in your field. So you can ask the most relevant kinds of interview questions that you can ask. Everyone in this webinar is familiar with the scientific method, or should be. And I've heard other investigators, say that, hey, I follow the scientific method in this investigation. But my argument, and maybe not so much an argument, but a point to make, is that if you're not prepared as an investigator, if you don't have enough of the knowledge, skills, training, background in your field of expertise, then what kind of questions are you asking that are going to be relevant in the investigation, in your interviews? So how effective really does that scientific method become, the use of it become? So the more prepared you are, the better trained you are, the more knowledge you seek, then the more effective interviewing you can do, right? And I always start out interviews, whether I was doing the criminal stuff or on the private sector side, you have to make the people feel comfortable that you're interviewing. You can't come across as heavy-handed. You have to keep that door open to want to come back and ask more questions and say, hey, we're just trying to get to the bottom of what happened here, and we don't know what happened. And even if you have a strong suspicion, you have to kind of come across like that. We don't know what happened here. I'm going to ask you a whole series of questions. It's just me trying to figure stuff out. And then, hey, if I go through the scene and have questions later, can I recontact you and ask follow-up questions, right? So you never want to come across as accusatory. You don't want to come across as threatening. You want to be sympathetic, empathetic in your interviews, but you also have to have a good foundation for, what you're asking. In fire and explosion scene investigation, just asking, fire dynamics related questions. It's so important to understand the effects of ventilation and fire dynamics in a fire scene. So, questions like, what doors and windows are open, not just on the outside the house, but inside the house, because everything affects fire progression and ventilation. And just asking really good, basic, sound questions, and then being able to go back and ask those questions again.
Yeah, that's a great point. My experience on the private side, anyone being interviewed, it does seem sometimes like they maybe withhold some information because they feel like they're being interrogated. And it's a good point to make sure whomever you're interviewing, you're showing empathy, you're showing compassion. It could be the worst day of their life, certainly their week. We're dealing with fires and explosions, so it's a good point to come at it with empathy, with curiosity. You're not accusing the person you're interviewing, but you're more sort of just curious, asking questions, trying to get to the cause and what happened. That's great. How would you say, maybe prior to arriving on scene, you're talking about doing a lot of homework before and preparing good questions. Walk us through like that process for you. How do you, the homework portion of before you're even on site?
Yeah. Great question there. So if from the moment I get an assignment, whether it be from an attorney, a law firm, or an insurance rep or adjuster, I'm going online. I'm looking for any online articles about about the fire, looking for photographs, video. I'm calling the local fire department, and if they have an investigator, I'd like to speak with the investigator. Um, I'll reach out to other contacts and in areas, I know a lot of people over the country, and being from ATF, and I travel around quite a bit, so I have a lot of good resources of information. So I'll reach out to them and ask them what they know about the fire, and look up weather-related data, anything at all, the building records. I mean, you name it, whatever's out there, open source data, I'll try to find it and talk to people. And then, so you go in with as much information and knowledge prepared. Being prepared is the key. And then you mentioned curiosity, and I would say that in this line of business, if you're not a curious person by nature, you might be in the wrong line of work, right? You have to be curious. You have to want to know why something happened, why something didn't happen in a fire or explosion scene investigation.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think just in general in life, usually curiosity will get you a lot further. Would anyone else like to kind of piggyback, maybe ask Mike a question? We certainly have a good range of experience here. All right. Well, Mike, anything else you'd like to see? I know we have a lot of questions popping up in the chat, and we'll certainly get to some of those at the end. I'll make sure we have some extra time on that. But anything else you would like to recommend as far as good techniques for interviewing or how to prepare before you arrive on scene?
No, again, with respect to interviewing, I've been part of thousands of interviews, thousands, and I've seen interviewers shut people down within the first couple of minutes just by the posture they take, the attitude they take, the demeanor they take. So it's always better to just, like I said, come in easy, don't be threatening, even if you think the person set a fire or has some role in it. And it's also getting people over the hump of a lot of people don't want to admit to something, even if it's an accident, because they feel guilty about it. They think they're still going to get in trouble about it. And so you have to get people also over the hump of thinking they're going to be in trouble for something they're not going to be in trouble for. And so again, that takes again talking to them in more sympathetic fashion than
Mhm.
not, and just explaining things to them in a kind way as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect point. I've certainly seen the wheels turning when someone's being interviewed because they are afraid of getting in trouble or maybe not having their claim covered. So that's a perfect point to bring up to start the conversation with. Not only are you just curious, you're looking for information, but they're not possibly in trouble. Even if they did something by an accident, they're not going to jail for an accident. Depending, every case can be different, I understand that, but just reassuring the person you're just trying to understand the facts. Yeah.
And let them know that they're not in trouble. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the main thing. They want to be assured that they're not going to be in trouble for something they did.
yeah, that's a great point. All right, well, anything else you wanna share before, we move on to Mr. Roger?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mike, appreciate your time. Okay, next expert we have, Mr. Roger Thorpe. He's a firefighter for the Department of Defense and private investigator with Joseph E. Myers Investigations, LLC. He spent years documenting fire scenes for insurance and legal cases, focusing on clear, defensible reporting that aligns with NFPA 921 and NFPA 1033. Roger combines traditional fire investigation methods with 360 imaging, iGUIDE technology, and AI-based tools to improve how scenes are captured, analyzed, and presented. Hi, Roger.
Morning, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a good
Good.
podcast so far, or Zoom.
Yeah. Webinar podcast. Yeah, there's so much experience and knowledge on this webinar. Every person could have multiple hours on their own. So I appreciate you coming on and joining us today to talk a little bit about scene documentation and some of the technology you're using. I guess let's start with before you take any photos or scans when you first arrive on scene. Can you walk us through what your process is and how you begin to assess what's happening?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like Mike said, before you get on scene, you're obviously doing your research. My research starts with looking at realtor.com or one of those websites to see what the building might have looked like ahead of time. And then once you get on scene, we're doing our initial walkthrough. We're doing a 360, just like you're on a fire scene if you're a firefighter. You're doing a 360 outside view. We're looking around the house, we're looking for hazards, things of interest, things to take note of. And then I'll do an overall sweep in the house. No cameras, just a flashlight and me, or if I'm with a partner, alone, and we will walk through the house. We'll do every room. We'll just take mental notes of, again, safety issues, things of concern, fire patterns, what windows may be broken, what doors may be closed, locked, and kind of get our bearings on the situation. And then from there, we'll then start our documentation. It's important to note that we're not modifying, changing, doing anything on the initial walkthrough, just looking at key points of interest and safety issues, basically. And then we will transition into our documentation of the fire scene using the iGUIDE, me specifically using the iGUIDE camera for 3-4 years now. And I always tell people, when you're using the camera, use it like you're going to use it like you're seeing the scene for the first time. So again, we'll trace our same footsteps. Exterior of the house, we're building. We'll scan every side, corner. So you're getting Alpha Bravo, Bravo Charlie, Delta corners, and then work our way from the front door in. And we're going from always least damage to most damaged, because we like to show that progression of fire damage. And it looks really great for attorneys and juries and public adjusters that we're talking to kind of explain our situation and how we're seeing the fire scene span out for us.
So when you're on a scene, what type of tools, other than, you mentioned you're using iGUIDE, so a 3D or a 360 camera solution, what other tools are you using for documentation? Do you solely rely on that? Or are you also using photographs and measuring?
Yeah, no, ultimately I use the iGUIDE for the overall picture. That paints a beautiful picture and it takes measurements really nicely. What iGUIDE won't do, and it's expected, is it won't give the detail of close-up photos. It's not designed to do mid-range and close-up photos of specific things that we want to see, whether it be a faulty outlet in the wall that we want to document very clearly with a digital SLR. So I always use the iGUIDE as the overall, and then we will get up nice and close with a digital SLR or a digital camera of your choosing, and whatever one you like. But something that provides more detail, more close-up photos that we can then tie into the iGUIDE with tags or points of interest within the finalized product.
Yeah, that's a great point, to still use your photographs as well, getting up close photos. I always say, you can never have too much documentation on any scene, fire or crime scene, and it's especially using some type of 360 technology to where every little inch of the property is documented and you're not missing any rooms or any spaces. So once you've collected all of your data, how are you building a report that holds up possibly in court or to any challenges?
Sure. So the iGUIDE, the iGUIDE is really nice in the sense that it will stitch all of our photographs together. And I'll piggyback off what you just said about not having, you can never have too much data. So I will scan. Typically, a room will have 5 to 6 scans, one in each corner, and then 1 or 2 or 3 in the middle of the room to really bring it all together. But the iGUIDE camera will be really good about stitching that footage together and measuring at the same time, and ultimately making really beautiful blueprints for us with documentation on, if it's a kitchen, it'll show the kitchen table, the chairs, the countertops, if you opt to have that option turned on or not. But then once I will write my report, I will typically give a link to our private iGUIDE finalized product on the web, or you can download the files locally and host it yourself if you'd like. And I will typically put a link for that in the fire report and then include it with our photo logs and final product to the attorney or the insurance carrier, whoever is requesting the data from us. And it'll reference in the report the iGUIDE scan, and then the iGUIDE scan will then further reference points of interest, areas where evidence was obtained, or putting in tags showing this is our area of origin, and then localizing it to our point of origin, and then follow that up with camera photos that are also injected and tagged in the final product as well. And
That's
we've gotten a
great.
lot of great feedback. I mean, people love it. The attorneys really like it because they're not in the field with us, and it gives them a point of view from me. And if you really want to go further, do the VR option where you can see it in virtual reality and really get a sense of what it looks like and what the final fire scene looks like that we're dealing with. And sometimes we'll have, sometimes attorneys say, hey, let's go after XYZ product, and having the iGUIDE show them and say, listen, the fire scene is way more beyond damage than you're going to have a hard time or a hard hill to climb to get that product failure determination. And the iGUIDE really just brings that into fruition for them to understand, like, we may think it's this product, but there's so much damage and we can't rule out this, this, and this if you look at the iGUIDE scan and see how much damage there is. And it really helps us kind of, I don't want to say guide the attorneys in the right direction, but paint a good picture for them to understand the hill they're going to climb if they want to pursue a certain product manufacturer.
Yeah, absolutely. The saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm trying to think of a great saying to come up with about a full 360 3D virtual tour that's immersive.
Sure.
I mean, 1,000 words, 1,000,000 words. There's really no comparison to just showing a slideshow of photos versus an actual immersive virtual tour to where you feel like you're on site. And that's a great point that, especially on the private side, maybe the attorneys don't have the opportunity to walk the scene. There are a lot of interested parties that will never actually physically be on the scene. So being able to walk them through a virtual tour it's paramount. And even walking, if something were to go to trial, walking a jury through with a virtual tour can certainly impact the success or failure of a case. Absolutely. Anything, I know we're getting close on time, so I do want to respect everyone's time.
Sure.
Is there anything you would like to add when it comes to maybe a process for documentation? Things maybe you see other investigators might, or new investigators may overlook when it comes to documenting?
The big thing, and I learned this as a new investigator years ago, was if you didn't take a photo of it or document it, it didn't exist. I will typically I did a fire the other day on a single family house. I think it was 400 photos plus our iGUIDE scan. I am one of those people that will go back and review the photos and double check things that I might have want to clarify or think I might have missed, and do that. And so when I say take photos of everything. It just will make your life so much easier. And the attorneys will thank you. And I have a quick story. I went to court once years ago, and they made an argument that the other parties were not involved in a lab exam. And I was able to show a photo. I took a photo of everyone in the lab at a lab exam and said, here's everyone in the lab. And it wasn't a secret. Everyone knew I took the photo, but I will take photos at the fire scene, the lab exam, and everything in between. And that includes screenshotting. If somebody shows you, if the insured shows you a product that they think they bought, I will screenshot it from their phone with my camera or their iPad and document it. And so, yeah, documentation is key. It has to be done. And
Mhm.
it'll make your life a whole lot easier.
That's a great point. Even photographing the lab investigation. Again, just harping on that point that you can never have too much data. You can never have too much documentation. It's always, if you think, oh, I'll never need it, well, that's the photo you do need. So that's a really good point to make that, and I think we've touched on this so much that the investigation is not simply just when you arrive on scene. The investigation encompasses the research you do beforehand, the scene investigation, the interviews, the lab deconstructions. That's a really good point. Well, we are about 5 minutes out. Thank you so much, Roger. Okay. Well, I think we're going to move on. I think my moderator has a slide to throw up here for everyone, and then we will get to some questions in the chat. Now, for those who are not familiar with iGUIDE technology or maybe any 360 technology, Roger touched on his experience, and certainly the other investigators on this call are using iGUIDE for fire scene documentation. And really, you'll see a picture of our camera on site. This is our 360 camera system. This is our PlanX R1. The top half of it is the Ricoh Theta X. It's a dual lens 360 camera. It's connected and calibrated to our proprietary core that's using LiDAR. So at the same time you're pressing a scan button, you're getting 2 panoramic images and thousands of measurements with the laser. And together, once we collect all that data, you're creating your iGUIDE, which is this fully immersive 360 3D virtual tour that you could walk any interested party through, really capture the essence of the scene, not just the area of origin, but outside of the property, walking inside of the property to really paint the best picture. Some things that separate iGUIDE from other technologies on the market: with iGUIDE, you own your data. So there's no monthly subscription or hosting fees. You're paying per project. And then once you've paid for that project, that data is yours, meaning you can download an offline version of the virtual tour, as well as all the panoramic images and all the data that go along with your project. You can download that offline version, store it on your computer, putting on a thumb drive, store it on an external hard drive that's yours to keep indefinitely. Certainly, we don't have all day today to go talk into many of the details with this. Just know that both public and private investigators, certainly throughout the US and Canada, but the world, are using this technology, our technology, to accurately document scenes. All right, we'll move along. I do want to say, for anyone who is interested in knowing more about iGUIDE after this conversation, certainly reach out to me if you are in the US. That is my information. I have a colleague in Canada where we are headquartered in Waterloo, Mr. Victor. He will be able to assist you if you're in Canada. And then Frankie is our global resale partner, and he's in Belgium. We have a reseller network throughout the world to where if you are interested in purchasing an iGUIDE system and using it on your scenes, you can locate a reseller, or if the country's not on the list, we can chat with Frankie. Do any of my experts on the panel, if you're in the chat, do you see any questions that you'd like to address head on?
I started responding to a few of them. The 360 halo light that people were talking about, that is by far the best light to pair with this camera. You used to be able to buy it from B&H Photo, but now you have to buy it direct from Bushman. I think they're out of Russia or Romania. I'm not really sure. But it works really well with this camera. You can mount 2, one above and one below the camera if you'd like. I will typically run 2 if it's really dark, but typically 1 below the camera is fine.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always make it's a lot more convenient to have a lighting source that connects with the system. You know, you have the camera sitting on the tripod, the light sits in between, opposed to setting lighting sources up and moving them room to room. The whole idea is to make your time more efficient and easier. I do see a question. Oh, where did it go? Asking about CAD files. So the answer is yes. With our camera system, you're collecting data, you're collecting the point cloud data, and you're collecting visual data for, you know, the panoramic images. When you submit that data to publish your iGUIDE, there are many different outputs that you can order. So we professionally draft schematic floor plans, we draft CAD files, DWG, Revit, and we also draft ESX files for the insurance claims industry. So it is one solution that can work in many different industries. If you're looking for a CAD 3D model, we can certainly produce that as well. I'm going to go through some other questions. Again, if you'd like a full demo another day, happy to meet with everyone, you know, one-on-one or maybe your teams as well.
A question for Bob.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Bob, when you're using AI as part of a fire investigation, are you coming across AI hallucinating? And if so, how often is that a problem?
I have had some situations where they've hallucinated or given improper information. Mike is very familiar with these testings that ATF did about a cigarette lighting gasoline vapors. The first time I asked that question of ChatGPT, it says, well, of course, the end of a cigarette is X amount of degrees. The ignition temperature of gasoline is this degree, and you can tell that the cigarette has a higher temperature, so it's going to ignite, so be careful. Well, you ask a few other chatbots out there, specifically Perplexity is what I like because it gives you citations as to where they found that data. And Perplexity referenced test data, published test data that ATF did on that very question. Will a cigarette ignite gasoline vapors? And after thousands and thousands of attempts, it didn't. So it's important, again, to use those services where you can vet that information and verify it.
Mhm.
So it's okay then to smoke a cigarette while you're filling up your car with gas.
Well, you can. What you don't want to do is probably try and light it. Then you're going to be in trouble. But I wouldn't do it anyways.
What I will say about AI, because I dabble with it too, and with ChatGPT, I've set a very specific set of directions for it to follow, and I will link it to a Google Drive of PDF versions of all of the NFPA codes, Brady, Kirkland, fire textbooks, and I'll tell it specifically, don't look at anything other than these books in this Google Drive account, and it'll only pull from that and give me citations just using those sources, which I find is a lot more helpful, and it limits it searching the internet for random stuff that I don't want it to look at.
That's a great point. That's training that large language model or giving it a specific prompt. Prompt engineering is, quite frankly, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, where you're going to get the best output. And Roger makes a great point. You know, if you're very specific on what you're looking for and where they should search for that information, you should be good.
Yeah, and it's why I brought up the point earlier about, you know, you need to be the expert in fire dynamics and ventilation. I asked AI, can AI effectively interpret fire patterns in relation to ventilation effects, fuel load, and compartment geometry? And AI came back and said that it can be fooled by post-flashover conditions or by fire suppression efforts from a fire scene. So this is why, you know, we need to be on top of our game. And ironically, it's like if you're not on top of your game, the answer that AI gave me is like some investigators. If they don't understand, you can sit and explain fire dynamics all day long to an investigator fire scene, but it becomes glaringly apparent that if they don't get it, they don't get it. And so this is why we need to be the experts and understand And the more we use AI and the more we know before we use AI, the more effective AI is going to be useful to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an experience where I asked an AI model. It was a simple question about subrogation and fire investigations, and it gave me the exact answer I wanted. And then I asked, "Can you please cite where you found this information?" And I can't remember the exact wording. It was hilarious because it basically said, "There is no proof. I just made it up." There was no site. There was nothing that was actually legitimate for that answer. But keeping in mind, we all face biases all day. AI is still learning and growing, and it's certainly going to have some biases to give you the answer that you want. So keeping in mind to check all your sources. Does anyone want to answer that question about how often do fire investigators find they could use a degreed and licensed fire protection engineer to assist in fire system evaluation or even fire spread their facility with FDS modeling?
Yeah, I've hired them in the past. I hired one recently in Yonkers, New York, for a big warehouse fire. It's not super common for me to have to hire a fire protection engineer or specialist. Typically, I'll be hiring them to review things like sprinkler system coverage and functionality. And they'll go very in depth on, in this particular one, it was rack storage systems and whether or not the sprinkler system coverage was appropriate for covered racks, uncovered racks, figuring out that, whether they were or not. As far as the FDS modeling, I think I've done it once or twice. It always requires attorney or insurance coverage approval because of the cost. But typically they won't deny me if I explain the situation as to why it's important or why I think it needs to be done. I wish FDS modeling was a little bit easier. It's not super user-friendly. It's very code-based and terminal-based, which I'm not that guy. But yeah, I have used them in the past. I think you'll see them more on industrial level or big commercial level losses to help drive home the point of fire spread and how it's affected by fire flow paths and sprinkler systems and whatnot.
Okay. Well, thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.